Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Equilibrium, our women's health series. Today, I'm here with Kiara Norwood. She is an award-winning alternative wellness therapist and certified trauma specialist offering reiki therapy, holistic herbalism, and coaching. I'm Bria. Hello, welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you. I am a hardcore herbalist and I am excited for this. Tell me a little bit about your background. Who are you?
So I'm Kiara. I'm from Chicago, originally, and I went to school, undergrad in Michigan. My family moved to Indiana, so then I then went there for grad school, and I'm living back in the Chicagoland area. My educational background, I have my bachelor's degree in allied health science, with an emphasis in speech language pathology and a psychology minor, and then my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. So before I embarked upon this journey, I actually was practicing. It depends on what it's called in your state, but like licensed professional counselor, licensed mental health therapist, along those lines. But as I was kind of trying to navigate and heal from like some childhood trauma, as well as like some like young adult trauma, and then navigating some other like physical and spiritual health concerns, I started seeking out other remedies for help just because I recognized that typical ways of treating the ailments and concerns that I was having was not helpful to me.
And you also, I mean, you focus a lot on ancestral healing. Is that right? What is that?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of plays into a lot of your practice and healing for your patients. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's multifaceted. I will say that oftentimes, like when you do have what would be considered like a healer gift or some type of like spiritual gift, which a lot of times, like being something like a Reiki practitioner or a herbalist or however, it may be that you participate if you are a healer, how you participate in that. Those are gifts from like a kind of spirituality standpoint when we think about like indigenous and African spirituality that typically are passed down in our lineages.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that element of it already, kind of stepping into this call, especially when we think about how historically a lot of these practices were really looked down upon, and in some ways today still are. So
Mm-hmm.
there's that element of it, as well as a lot of my clients, as well as myself, have stepped into what it looks like to participate in more African spirituality, being able to practice more like reverence for our ancestors, recognizing that we have this kind of layer of protection from the ancestors and things that look out for us. So that's a big portion of it if a person wants to integrate that into kind of like their coaching and things, and it's a big part of my life currently. But then also too recognizing like kind of like, for instance, if you're a herbalist, these are things that were practiced from centuries back, from our people, and a lot of the modern medications that are being prescribed and that we use actually have a basis kind of like in plants. And so all of these things kind of tie in to that ancestral background, and recognizing that we come from kind of like these people that really paved the way for us, and in a lot of ways, depending on your belief system, they're still kind of here looking out for us and able to be accessed for wisdom, guidance, protection, things of those natures. So.
Now, what would you say to, someone who is kind of skeptical to this sort of healing and this sort of coaching? What would you say to them?
I would say, I think, do what you feel like you're being called to do, because it definitely is a journey. And so I never want a person to feel like they're being forced or pressured into participating in a said thing. Like a lot of these things really are, you kind of, if you're a person that has been like participating in these things, or you notice that you do have certain gifts, you recognize for yourself that it's a pull, and like you really do kind of, you get shown the directions that you're supposed to be going in. When you're in alignment, things start then aligning. And so at that point, it's like the people that know, and if you're not at that point yet, that's okay. Like we
How do
all
you
have
know
our
when you
own journey.
know?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know when you know?
I know for me, things really just started falling in place. So while there were definitely a lot of challenges and a lot of struggles, there were also a lot of things where I was like, this is undeniable, at this point. Like this very much is like something that I can't get away from. Like all of the signs are signing at this point, and all of the opportunities are opening. And it's just interesting. So like, for instance, when I first decided that I wanted to kind of pivot into coaching, I kind of was figuring out how I wanted to do that, if I just wanted to offer coaching services, if I wanted to offer something else. And then I was like, well, if I were to learn like an additional like energy healing modality or something like that, I would want to learn from another person of color, preferably someone that's like indigenous or has a basis in being like from African ancestry. Like I was really intentional with who I wanted to learn from. And so I kid you not, I'm kind of just like Googling, and then I come across this person named Billy Topatate. And she is the founder of MSI Wellness Center here in Chicago, really popular amongst the hospitals because she actually teaches Reiki to a lot of like physicians and nurses and doctors and surgeons and things. So like all of the things that she teaches, like when it's actually like a structured program in class, like she's certified to be like a continuing education provider, usually for like massage therapists and things. But even so, like to get recognition like that, I thought was huge. So I randomly came across her profile, started looking things up, and then saw that usually they just kind of have like classes that are individual. But at this point, they actually had like a 3-week class. They were only accepting a certain amount of people. And it was an in-person Reiki class. And it was like so, I guess, difference, I guess, for what they had been doing, because she technically, according to her daughter, who actually like works in the business with her, had actually kind of stepped down, like in a way, kind of sort of retired, but was like still present, and had hired another instructor who she had trained to actually like teach her classes and things. That person, I think they said, either moved or quit. And so she was coming back after not teaching the class herself for like years. And was like, this is like the first time that she's teaching, and it might be the last time that she's teaching. And then they were only accepting like 15 people and had already had like 12 people sign up. So they were like, I mean, we're not trying to put pressure on you, but this is feeling like it may kind of be like a once in a lifetime thing. So if you want to do it, do it. Because at this point, we only have like 3 spots left. And I was like,
fine.
yes, like that's wild, because how is she kind of coming out of retirement to teach this class, and she doesn't usually do this. And it just so happens to be when I recently had moved back, because there was a transition where I actually moved from one state to another. So I moved back to the Chicagoland area after living in Northwest Indiana. So like that was a whole thing in itself. And so literally in the midst of kind of like all of this happening, like a couple months after I moved is when I came across this training. So for me, because of just like the things that I was navigating at that time, with starting to kind of come into alignment with this calling, I used to be really, really like, I still am, but when she was here, my grandmother, I was very, very close to her. She was like a mother figure to me, a very big source of wisdom, a source of like support, unconditional love. We were really, really close. And she died in a way that was surprising and unexpected for us. She actually died of a heart attack in 2018. And this was after like surviving breast cancer a couple of times already. So we really did not see this coming, because at that point we were like, if you can make it through that, you're, and it literally just came out of nowhere. And so for me, it was like a big grieving process, and it got better definitely like over time. But feeling like, this integral part of my support system was missing. And so as the partner is practicing on me and kind of noticing all of these blockages, she's like, at this point, I don't really see any like physical health concerns coming up for you in your body, but it all seems to be mental and emotional. And so a lot of this kind of like was occurring because I'm navigating all of these changes and trying to figure out what these things look like. And so for me, what actually ended up happening is I ended up having an experience where I was actually able to communicate with my grandmother in a way. And it doesn't happen for everybody in every situation. Not everybody is comfortable with that. That's not, how Reiki works all the time. But for me in that moment, that's what I needed as well.
Yeah. So I can imagine how that, was very memorable and impactful. Tell me, what exactly is Reiki therapy? Is it, like you said, like your partner was finding blockages, but emotionally and not, so it wasn't physical. So tell me kind of how that's found and how it works.
Yeah, so it uses, at least the version that I was taught. So there are different forms. I was taught the Yasui method. And so it uses the kind of main 7 chakras that we have. And from there, it unblocks the chakra center. So you have to be taught by a Reiki master, and they give you the opportunity to kind of participate in this said gift. And so you're going through, you do a scan of a person's energy aura. And then from there, you go and you individually unblock each chakra, main chakra, and a couple of them, like the mini chakras as well. And then from there, you utilize like Reiki healing through kind of like what you're attuned to, as they call it, to be able to kind of balance and get the energetic channels flowing. And so essentially this idea being that these chakra centers, they align to different experiences and like kind of parts of our being. So for instance, your stomach area would be considered your solar plexus chakra. Your solar plexus, it holds a lot of your self-esteem, your creativity. And so if this is blocked, you could have physical evidence of that in things like IBS, acid reflux, those types of things. But also you may struggle to be creative. You may struggle to have self-confidence and self-esteem, you know, and so being able to have that flowing and unblocked oftentimes does help.
I want to know, like when you're working with your different clients, is that sort of therapy and that sort of healing able to be done through the computer?
Yes, because energy is not something that is bound by time and space. And if I'm honest with you, I wasn't like, that was one of the things that we were taught in. So I am level 3 trained, which means I can do Reiki on myself, I can do Reiki distantly, and I can do it in person with other people. And so for me, I was like, I don't, you know, because I had only ever done it in person. So I'm being completely honest. Like, I was like, I don't know about this. Like, I mean, when I first started, I had an office and everything because I was just like, I feel like, you know, in person, because that was how I first got introduced, would be beneficial. But then I started having clients from like all over because, you know, as a coach and as an alternative wellness therapist, you can see clients from any location. And so I can't, you know, do it physically. And people were asking, and I was like, well, I'm trained, so I'm going to give it a try. And it's been beneficial.
Okay. I may have to look into this after this is over. So in honor, it's a Valentine's Day episode, and in honor of Valentine's Day, I know that you're also, you know, you work with people in their relationships. So talk to me a little bit about how you help with trauma and healing for people that are in a relationship, as well as people who are out of, you know, who are single, and kind of how you help them navigate those sort of issues that they're going through.
Yeah. And so it looks different kind of based on what the client's needs are, but at the bases, I am equipped and have knowledge in providing a bunch of different kind of coaching modalities that I can then, I guess, integrate into one if necessary. And so like I'm able to do, for instance, a nervous system coaching. So when we think about trauma, a big part of the traumatic response or traumatic experience is the autonomic nervous system. So essentially, that is your system that houses your fight, flight, and freeze response. And so the idea kind of behind participating in nervous system coaching is being able to provide education on what that system does, how it tends to become offset if you have a big traumatizing experience or multiple traumatizing experiences that I guess exceed what we like to call, it has different names, but essentially like your window of tolerance is what we could call it. So if you could envision a scale, and it like has 1 for like no distress, you're completely content, and then all the way up to 10 where you're like at your maximum distress. If you have something that's very, very traumatizing, or if you have like compounded or complex trauma, things that have happened over and over again, or a traumatic experience that went on for like a long period of time, it could exceed that window of tolerance. And so what that does is it offsets your autonomic nervous system. And so therefore, kind of based on the practice that I utilize, it's separated into 3 parts. And so either you're going to spend more time in the sympathetic version of this, or either what they call like the dorsal vagal version of your, or the part of your autonomic nervous system. And the ideal is to spend time at the top, which is kind of like ventral vagal. So if you were to visualize a ladder, it's literally like ventral vagal, sympathetic, dorsal vagal. Sympathetic is our fight and flight response. And then dorsal vagal is kind of like this fawn, kind of like freeze. So a lot of times if a person is experiencing like symptoms of feeling kind of like stuck, unable to move, feeling like they're navigating a lot of people pleasing, kind of like this fawning response, then it could be said, you know, depending on their specific concerns, does not apply to everybody, but their autonomic nervous system may be offset, and they may be spending a lot of time in dorsal vagal. It could be that they are in the sympathetic level, which is a lot of like the feelings of anxiety, a lot of the feelings of like anger, a lot of the feelings of hypervigilance. So literally just off of providing education about this system, it tends to make a big deal for people, and then giving you the steps and the knowledge on one, like when you're noticing that you're making a shift in this ladder, what are some things that you can do with yourself? What are some things you can do with other people? As well as what are your triggers that kind of take you into a new place in your ladder? And then what are some of the things that help you to stay at what feels like a healthy level?
Okay. Lots going into this. Are there advantages in having a therapist who is part of the LGBTQIA plus community versus one who is not, but is LGBTQ plus IA, or sorry, LGBTQIA plus affirming?
Mhm. I think that there can be advantages just based off of having a person that you feel like can understand a little bit more of your experience, and they also like navigate that in their day-to-day experience. But I also recognize that there may not be, like based on the area that you are in, the availability that you have, the concerns that you're having specifically. Because one thing about me, while I am an alternative wellness therapist, I'm not a practicing like licensed mental health therapist. However, if you're currently like in crises and like you like are having thoughts of like harming yourself or unaliving yourself, harming somebody else, or just overall in a level of distress that needs more acute care, you're probably going to need to see, like, depending on the level, either you probably need to be like admitted into an ER, or you at least need to see like a licensed mental health therapist to get you stable. And so when we think about those things, there may not be as much representation, you know, in that field. Or if you're looking for a coach, you know, just because there is so much need, you may not be able to find a person that you feel like can exactly identify with your experience. So
Right.
as long as you have the person that is affirming and they actually are doing the work, I think that that could still be beneficial. But I do think that there is a great benefit to working with someone that is in the community if you are in the community as well.
What are some ways that someone can sort of process any feelings of loneliness, especially on a day like today where everyone is, booed up, coupled up?
Yeah. I think it looks different for everybody,
Mhm.
but I think if you are, for instance, a person that is very relational, you get a lot of your energy and a lot of support, which we all need support. But if you feel like you get a lot of your support and things from your community, and you have that community system, whether it be just like one or two friends or like a larger community or organization that you're a part of, I think that leaning into that could be very beneficial, because we often feel like romantic relationships are like the most important form of love, the only valuable form of love, the only, I guess, version of relationships where we can learn about ourselves, where we can grow, where we can become these best versions of ourselves. A lot of people feel like that's their only purpose. But in actuality, you know, even when we think about our roots, like I work with women of color, specifically a lot of Black women, like when we think about our roots, we come from collectivistic culture. And so our community is a big part of our identity. It's a big part of how we learn about ourselves, how we navigate and view the world. And so being able to tap into that is something that's really important. Before I was in a long-term relationship, I had a friend that literally we would do a Galentine's Day every year. Like, and it was just as fun and just as fulfilling, you know,
Right.
as being able to participate in that with a partner. It shows and reminds you that you're still worthy of love, you still are loved. It helps you to, you know, remember to show up for the people in your life that are showing up for you, that are showing you love and care. And so I think that's one way to start. And also recognizing for yourself that not participating in a romantic relationship does not mean that you're lacking or that there's something wrong. It's a desire. And I think it's a beautiful desire. And also recognizing that if you have other support around you, being able to tap into that is also just as important.
I love that answer. That is so spot on. One last question for you. I think it's been so great to talk to you. We've covered a lot of ground, but I want to know how you measure success in your practice.
I usually measure it based off of the goals that a client has and by the end, their feelings of accomplishment regarding those goals. So one of the things that a person will do as they're becoming a client with me is they'll fill out like some different like intake forms, just like about like consent for treatment or like services, more so is a better word. But then also I'll have them fill out like a goal worksheet where they essentially like talk about like the concerns that they're experiencing, what are the goals that they have for our time together, as well as like some of the things that they already like about their life and things that they like about themselves and the things that they're doing already, so that we can pull on those strengths later. So then at the end, being able to see, like, did they feel like they accomplished their goal, but also too, their perception of themselves. Like, are they able to see more strengths? Are they able to see the way that they like move forward? Like, has their sense of self-efficacy improved? Things of those nature. So being able to have a conversation overall with them about the growth that they've seen with themselves is how I often measure success.
Oh my God. This has been a great conversation. I feel like I can talk to you all day. Practice the therapy. Man, this is good. Thank you.
Yes, I've enjoyed it too. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this is great. I will have to have you back on the show. We can just hang out. I'm going to talk to you all the time now.
Yes, I'm here for it. Definitely reach out.
Well, tell people how they can find you, reach out with questions, or, use your services.
Yes, so you can find me at knorwoodwellness.com. Also, my Facebook and Instagram handles are the same thing, Norwood Wellness, my TikTok as well. And from there, you can fill out a contact form, or you can send me an email at kiara@knorwoodwellness.com. If you just want to see more of like my content and my information, if you go to either my Instagram or Facebook, as well as my website, I do have like some of my latest articles that have been published. I do have a TikTok page at Norwood Wellness. So if you just want to see like some content, you can see that as well. And if you want to work with me directly or specifically, please don't hesitate to reach out then as well, by email, through my website, whichever medium you feel most comfortable with.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show. We'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Have a great day. Bye.